Welcome back to the Unpack Mindset, folks. This is Jesse, your host. So we're going to talk about the Pratt Factor today. Man, hopefully you guys are enjoying your Monday. We've had a crazy weekend, right? With all these little last minute votes that are coming in, and man, it's got everybody here in Los Angeles just shocked, right? Well, let me say this, if you ignore a statistical improbability long enough, it doesn't disappear, man. It detonates, right? History, it's well documented in history, right? When something just seems improbable, people are going to question it, right? I believe it was Richard Dawkins. Don't agree with everything that he says, but I do agree with this principle. He said that when something strategically improbable happens, it demands a deeper explanation. And if you refuse to give one, the backlash becomes the explanation. California's political establishment, folks, is pretending not to hear that echo, but the voters heard it out loud. Let's talk about Spencer Pratt for a minute, right? A candidate the establishment completely dismissed, minimalized, and refused to take seriously. The candidate who wasn't supposed to matter, right? But he did. He didn't just do well, he fractured the California coalition, man. He pulled support from independents, the fastest growing bloc in California, Democrats. He had a measurable slice that should terrify strategists, and Republicans overwhelmingly unified behind him. And when you add those numbers together, you get something the ruling class absolutely did not want to see. It's a strategic, and then what ends up happening is a strategically improbable surge at the last minute, but you also have a strategically improbable cross-party surge, right? But it's not enough to win, not enough to signal, not enough to warn, enough to prove that it's enough to prove that the ground underneath California politics is shifting. And folks, I believe that this last minute move, the optics are ugly, folks. The optics were horrible, and everybody saw it. Karen Bass, the incumbent, the favorite, the establishment's chosen figure, looked like she was avoiding real debates with a competent challenger. People noticed that when a leading candidate refuses to stand on a stage and agree to more debates and defend the record against someone who's gaining traction, it doesn't look confident. It looks like you're afraid. It looks scripted, man. It looks manufactured. It looks like the political machine is trying to run the clock out instead of facing the voters. And when you combine that the slow counts, man, and delayed updates and inconsistent reporting windows and the optics, they're not positive. They're radioactive, man. They're just radioactive. You don't have to claim wrongdoing to see that there's a problem. You just have to have eyes, right? Intelligent people, when they see something improbable, especially when it's a last minute surge just like that, intelligent people demand an explanation. Look at the global comparison, man. Let's look at the optics, right? You got India, a nation with like 1.4 billion people, counts pastors cleaner, faster, and with fewer processing delays than a single US state with like 39 million residents. That comparison should send chills. That comparison should send chills through everybody. Because when the world's largest democracy can tabulate results with clarity and California can't, people don't just shrug, man. They look at you and they laugh. They react. that reaction is I believe what Dawkins principle, his statement, that I believe that in itself becomes a prophecy, right? Improbable events demand explanation, folks. And if you refuse to explain them, they become the fuel, the backlash, the counter mobilization, the turnout surges, and the coalition shifts. We've seen this before, folks. The 2020 parallel, the statistical shock that changed everything, right? I mean, in 2020, millions of Americans, across states, across parties, watched a pattern unfold that felt statistically improbable to them. Early counts led one way, late counts leaned another way, and the shift at the end, the one that ultimately put Biden ahead, struck many voters as something that they didn't expect. Whether those impressions were accurate or not, whether the explanations were understood or not, the reaction was undeniable. It was undeniable, folks. The following election, they had record turnouts, massive mobilization, and political realignments. A too big to rig, was a too big to rig plan was put in play. There was like a wave of engagement. That wasn't a conspiracy. That was psychology, man, political psychology. That was human behavior responding to perceived improbabilities. California is now standing on the edge of that same psychological cliff, folks. You got this Pratt Factor now. Pratt's going to be a problem to the Democrats. And let me explain why the bullshit that the Democrats are doing in California isn't sitting well. When you have independents, the group that California politicians rely on to maintain stability, break towards a candidate like Pratt in significant numbers, it sends a message. You can't ignore them. When Democrats cross over, when a small percentage, even if it's a small percentage, it sends another message, right? Your monopoly isn't as secure as you think. When Republicans unify behind a single outsider candidate, it sends a third message. We're done being ignored. Put those together, folks, and you get something the establishment cannot afford to dismiss, but they did. A statistically improbable coalition forming under their feet. That's what they're fueling. And if history is any guide, folks, ignoring that kind of signal doesn't make it go away. It makes it explode. So I don't know, man. I'm gonna end it with this. If California's leadership thinks this election was the end of something, they're wrong. It was the beginning. It was the beginning, right? Because statistically improbable events do not fade. They echo. And when you refuse to explain the obvious, the people become the explanation. It's that simple, folks. It's that simple. If you like my content, I'm going to leave you with this. If you like my content, feel free to like and subscribe, share. I'm Jesse, and you're listening to the Unpack Mindset. Hopefully, you guys have a nice Monday. And have a good night.